Now, what I call compare and contrast, and we start with a song. Filling my heart with your loving kindness, I find my peace in the shadows of your wings. I eat my fill from the abundance of your household, and I drink from the streams of rejoicing. You are my King. Of course, the song is from uh, the steadfast love of the Lord that never ceases. But if you look at the title of the podcast, being an examiner, it's actually about examination questions. Usually, when you ask students to compare and contrast, some of the things that they do is that they basically, uh, if this is what you taught them in class, they basically give you this aspect and that aspect without actually doing the comparison and the contrasting, and that can be very problematic. But we also see that this actually happens also in terms of the way people relate with God. People like to show, how God is vengeful, particularly referencing the Old Testament. A good example is Joshua chapter 11, verse 11. And he struck all the people who were in it with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them. There was none left breathing. Then he burned Asshur with fire. So people would like to bring up that to show that God is vengeful, vindictive, but they will not want to show you the other aspect, which is the contrast now. Jonah chapter 3, verse 10. Don't forget, Jonah is a very interesting story. This was the prophet that God told to go preach to Nineveh because he had heard of their wickedness and was going to pass judgment on the city. And Jonah didn't want to go because he felt God would be merciful to Nineveh because he had an interest. He wanted Nineveh to be destroyed. Eventually, after all the drama and the fish, he repented and eventually went to Nineveh and began to preach. And interestingly, from the king to the least person, they put on sackcloth and ashes. They began to repent of their sins, and God had mercy on Nineveh. But Jonah was unhappy. And we see this in himself and God having this interaction in Jonah chapter 4, verse 10. But the Lord said, you have had pity on the plant for which you have not labored, nor made it grow, which came up in the night and perished in the night. And should I not pity Nineveh, that great city, in which there are more than 120,000 persons who cannot discern between their right hand and their left? So God gives a very long rope. Even with the children of Israel, God gives a long rope. When they refuse to repent, that is when they begin to get judgment. So whether you are listening to this podcast as a country, as an individual, God is still giving you a long rope, and you need to make a commitment to the Lord, because when the cup reaches a particular, when the cup is full, then judgment will start. And you don't want to experience God's wrath. You want to experience God's mercy.